All right, everyone. We are back here as promised for round number 7 of Native Swiss here at the Modern 10K Showdown in Chicagoland, beautiful Chicagoland, Illinois. Here in our G Series. Again, this is the 10K Showdown. This is the last event, of course, with the event tomorrow of season 2 of this year. So the next event on the schedule is, of course, the championship. Last opportunity to qualify for many of these players, and quite a bit of point shakeups that have been going on even today. We've talked a lot with Connor earlier through the day on his hunt for Player of the Year, but outside of just the points, this is a modern format too that is still very much shaking out post Nadu ban. So there's some of that at work here as well as players are really working through the format. And I'm here in the booth with Corbin, and we're going to be covering some of that modern here in just a moment. So yeah, what's your thoughts? Talk to me a little bit about your take on modern right now as we get set up and ready to go.
Yeah, man. Thrilled, first of all, to be in here with you to take this tournament home. Take the handoff. We took the relay here from the team this morning, and happy to finish this thing out with you. So, modern, of course, being my favorite format, and we're going to get some of the absolute peak modern decks coming up here, right? Not just the sort of the top decks, which are, the energy decks that have taken over since Nadu, and they really give you a baseline to shoot for, but some of the more experimental decks that are actually finding success, of course, with the lands coming in for Modern Horizons 3 and the other shakeups. So Modern in a great spot in terms of at least having very unique decks right now. So that is a pretty good spot to be, right? We've got to watch 6 rounds of it so far. We've got 2 more rounds in this 10K leading into our top 8. I will say that Modern is kind of taking a backseat, right? Since Nadu got banned, we have a big focus on Standard. We've had Duskmorn release. We had the World Championship last week. Of course, everyone, all eyes on Standard. Meanwhile, Modern in the background has kind of just been quietly adjusting to this idea that Boros and Mardu Energy are the top decks, right? Depending on how you look at them, but not unbeatable, right? And we've seen people have cards that can really be blowouts, right? And while those maybe clearly are the best percentages you can find, there is still a lot you can do for those people who really enjoy some of the more, experimental is maybe the word, modern decks that you can find success with.
Yeah, and I want to take a moment as these players are getting set up. We will get down to the match here in just a moment. We're going to watch some more of the kinds of decks you're talking about. I believe we're going to be featuring Fletcher and Mardu Energy. Before we dive in, I kind of want to take a step back, talk a little bit for just a moment about the modern format. It feels like there's 2 camps. Like there are these camps of, okay, Modern Horizons 3 was too much, and the One Ring combined with that has just erased Modern as we know it, and that's kind of ruining everything. I've seen calls in chat just watching the stream today, and of course calls on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, talking about that as well. But then also, as I've been watching the games, I see people saying, the format's in a pretty good spot. There's a lot of archetypes that are represented. You can finally combo again. The elemental menace that really shut down combo for a long period of time in the modern format has really taken a back seat to some of the other stuff going on. There's aggro decks, there's control decks, all these kinds of things. So you get an archetype representation, which is something people always like. And if you look at the cards that are ending games, even just from what we've seen today, I mean, these are not cards printed in Modern Horizons 3. We're talking about Goblin Charbelcher. We're talking about Blood Moon. People have been dying of that thing since Modern's inception. Lightning bolts, all of the there is still a lot of the core of what made modern, and all of however you feel about it. A lot of that's still available and happening even at the event here today. But of course, there is still plenty of games where the One Ring does come down and does what it says on the tin, right? Where it just invalidates a lot of the game previously played. You watch somebody tap it and try to sort through all their options, and the game's over. And there's some people that don't like that, and I feel for those people. But at the same time, I think maybe it's disproportionate to the actual card's impact, just because it is a Universes Beyond card that now costs like $100 or whatever.
Yeah, and before, it's always going to be something, right? And before that, it was, as you mentioned, grief. And
Right.
that was sort of the pressure on the format before, right? Is whatever your deck did, it had to be able to withstand getting double griefed and then thought seized or whatever on turns 1 and 2.
Yeah.
That was the pressure on the format. Now, whatever your deck does, it needs to be able to handle the Boros Energy Start, where they go 1, 2, 3, have 10 permanents in play by turn 3 or 4 or whatever, and you just are getting steamrolled, right? That is the new pressure that you face that your deck has to be able to answer, and things like Charbelcher that can kind of ignore what's going on there, as opposed to playing, the wraths of the skies to try to answer it. can just ignore it entirely. That's kind of the lines in which we're seeing Modern diverge a little bit. But within that, you obviously have a lot of different things you can play. We obviously have Eldrazi represented to some extent, and you have, there are always going to be your burn players, your amulet players, because of course Modern has people who just love their deck, right? Obviously, if it's up to me, I'm going to play Merfolk. One of our qualifiers for the championship at the end of the year, Nikachu, did so playing Merfolk this year, as a matter of fact, right? Just his deck, and he really found a way to succeed with it in, I believe, a Nadu format at that time. So, and that's kind of, I think, the appeal that Modern is always going to hold, no matter what is the top deck at the moment. That said, obviously, Boros from Mardu Energy are extremely good, and with Rage and with Goblin Bombardment, the ability for them to stretch their really turbo aggressive starts into a late game that just keeps that pressure coming and keeps the burn coming. That's really, I think, what's turned it into the top deck. And if anything ends up changing, we're talking about the One Ring and all these things. That's going to be the deck that right now places Modern. Well, I believe, with that said,
yeah, I think we are ready to go. But hey, a perfect lead into what we're about to watch. We were just talking a little bit about the energy deck. You can see Daniel Weiser, somebody that we've come to know very well on the NRG series here, playing the Mardu take on the energy deck. Usually this one supporting Thoughtseizes and things of that nature. Against Fletcher Johnson, #1 on the Season 2 leaderboard, currently looking very good to punch their ticket to the 2024 Energy Championship, this time on their take on Belcher. And this is a relative newcomer, even in a post-Nadu world, I'd say. This kind of mono-blue Belcher deck, a big divergence from what you think of when you think of the card Goblin Charbelcher. You think of Seething Songs and Empty the Warrens and making a bunch of mana using Lion's Eye Diamond and Legacy to crack it, blow it up. At least you've been around as long as you and I have. I think that's kind of what you think of. This set very much kind of a different take. It can play a little bit of a slower game, actually gets to have like real lands in their deck thanks to these dual face cards. And you see kind of one of the, I guess, namesakes of this card for the moment is the 4X Lotus Bloom that they play, kind of taking the mantle from the Ad Nauseam decks as far as the best thing to be doing with Lotus Bloom in the Modern format. Players start off with that namesake Lotus Bloom, and of course an elegant parlor here coming off the fetch lane for Daniel Weiser. Going to get some surveil action. Can't underrate the impact those cards would have. There was a lot of conversation around how impactful they'd be, and I think we have learned very well as Goblin Bombardment hits the bin. Not the match for this at the moment. Goblin Shrine on tap. Ajani, powerful turn 2 here. Here comes a 2/1 cat token to get the pressure started.
Yeah, no one drop, but a textbook 2 there for Daniel. You mentioned, right, with Charbelchers, we think of it as a certain way. Think about how many people are playing Magic right now, Drake, who have never seen Goblin Charbelcher before, right? It got printed into Modern however many years ago, and it never really made an impact, right? We're all of us Magic boomers are like, wow, I'd really like it if Goblin Charbelcher would be a deck.
I don't know if that's true. A polarizing card, I'd say, is Goblin Charbelcher.
Not a fan? I love it.
I'm fine with a Goblin Charbelcher. You can see the namesake 4-mana artifact. I believe Mirrodin block. Don't quote me. 4-mana artifacts, 3 activating reveal till you hit a land, and of course you try not to play lands. That way you deal 50 damage, 40 damage, however many cards are left in your deck. That is usually more than enough for lethal, but you can get in some weird spots where it's not. As we find the second copy of Goblin Bombardment. That one gets rid of the cat token right away, and so Ajani can flip. We have a red permanent thanks to the bombardment, so can get another cat token and get some more damage going off of that powerful 0 ability from the backside here of the Ajani Nikal Pariah. That's Ajani Nikal Avenger is the backside. So back over to Fletcher. A card we were seeing a lot of is the Ajani, and it's funny, even as a legendary creature, still one you're more than happy to play 4 copies of. And Daniel Weiser still not flooded with any 1-drops, but the 2-drops are doing a good job of laying on the pressure. Only 1 counter left on this Lotus Bloom, though, so the clock is ticking on that axis as well. Remember, Fletcher here truly trying to build that 7-mana threshold play, activate Goblin Charbelcher, win the game that way. And with none of kind of the namesake cantrip effects that Belcher supports in this current iteration really being played yet, I have to imagine Fletcher's got something up his sleeve.
Well, he certainly didn't keep this hand to just play a few lands and die, right? So
you don't like the 3 tap lands die strategy.
Just lose. Well, you got my mana. If I draw my Belcher, I'll win, right? No, maybe, but maybe he's just setting up as more likely here. Daniel has what you needed, though, right? The being able to flip the Ajani early like that is that you're going to keep the pressure up. That is the most, I think, difficult card when you're playing against the energy deck to interact with is a flip to Johnny. And if not that, it's Goblin Bombardment, which Daniel has as well, and that will allow him to point damage to the face and just kind of keep it coming. You see Fletcher down to 12, so you're getting to where, you know, Daniel's starting to think about the math, right? We're in an attack step and then activation and bombardment. You're starting to look at maybe probably next turn being able to close it out. Unfortunately, that is the turn when Lotus Bloom is going to come off of the suspend here, and I spotted a bunch of cards in Fletcher's hands. So I think we're going to see him at least attempt it. And so Daniel's going to try to add as much to the board as he can here to just try to guarantee that he can set up for next turn if he's not able to interact with Belcher.
Yeah, really need to make Fletcher have it here. But, I mean, obviously all signs point to Fletcher absolutely having it. And we got to look at the hand, of course. Fletcher does have it. Something to note here, Hydroelectric Laboratory was placed untapped. So that can actually represent a flash blocker in the form of that 1/4 Hydroelectric Specimen. So something worth noting there that there might be some surprise blockers here for cat tokens or something of that nature. But, I mean, I think it's a tall ask for Daniel to assemble a kill here. 9 points is a lot, even with a Goblin Bombardment. So the pressure might be just a little slow. And of course, play draw coming up huge here as well. We just mentioned the Lotus Bloom kind of key for enabling that burst of mana. And also not allowing Daniel Weiser to play the One Ring that he would have in hand. Of course, I think he's missing lands here, but still, you know, when you're talking about turn 4 being such a big key in the current modern format, is here does coming. Whir of Invention for 0. That one I think can find another Lotus Bloom. So yeah, plenty of mana next turn. Yeah. Absolutely. So that's kind of what we're holding up mana for. Remember, we did Super Shock bolts, if you will. What are we calling the shock effect of the backside of these lands? Are we just saying bolt lands, or what are we doing?
I don't know. I bolt myself, I guess, right? It's,
bolt myself works for me. So Fletcher bolting himself.
Fetch,
of course,
fetch bolt. I'm playing Belcher.
Check it out. And here's 4 mana. That looks like a Goblin Charbelcher, and it sure is. And I think we even have counterspell protection in the form of Disrupting Shell. So Fletcher's got plenty here. Activate. Show me your deck, says Daniel. And Daniel going to take a quick look through the deck list because, of course, it does reveal your entire library. No lands, at least not in the front half, in this Goblin Charbelcher deck.
But you named it when you brought up Ad Nauseam. That's exactly what this plays like, right? You went turn 0 or turn 1 Lotus Bloom. You just wait for it to go off. You've got your mana. Boom. You've got your Ad Nauseam, or in this case, Goblin Charbelcher. You've got the win. And when your opponents are playing a bunch of 1/1s and 1/2s and 2/1s, that's what you do. You just ignore it. You go around it over the top, and you just win the game by combo. Now, as we move to the sideboarding games in the future here, of course, this is why Daniel would opt for something like Mardu, because you can have some access to hand disruption that the Boros versions cannot. Now, you mentioned that there's so much counter magic packed into Fletcher's deck.
Yeah, and something interesting worth noting about Fletcher's deck, and you know, of course, it does have just a weird look. You're talking about an 8 artifact deck that has 4 copies of Whir of Invention. It's like, okay, well, that's kind of weird. And then you're also talking about a 4x Flare of Denial deck that usually has like 12 creatures in it. Actually, Fletcher has more than I think what I've seen. We do have the Taneshis as well. That's something that I guess you can kind of backdoor with the Lotus Blooms, get some of that combo going as well. But the typical Thunder Trap Trainer. Philology Archaeologist, and then of course the Hydroelectric Specimen that there is your lands. That's typically like the creature suite you see, and then of course you use those to flare. I mean, we've seen that happen in this tournament thus far, and you know, that really helps give you that extra turn, and that's why you would do something like this over Ad Nauseam, which had like Angel's Grace and weird cards. That doesn't necessarily matter against every deck in Modern right now, and having those counter magic spells in the form of Flare, Denial, Disrupting Shoal, Force of Negation, these are the things you bring to the table for being this mono blue combo deck that uses Lotus Bloom instead. So Fletcher going to win game number 1. Of course, he's on the hunt to be the season 2-point leader and punch his ticket to the end of year championship. So he's up a game, looking very well to do that here in round number 7. Let's take a quick look at the sideboards as these players are doing so as well. Going to start with Daniel Weiser. In the sideboard here, we have 2 copies of Ragavan Nimble Pilfer, 2 Orcish Bowmasters, 2 Sun Cleanser, the Gigantic Companion you'd expect, Worm's Chant, 2 Thraven Charm, 1 Deafening Silence, 1 Hill Spellbomb, 1 Damning Sphere, and 2 copies of the One Ring. So if you're Daniel Weiser, looks like you get all your thoughts. He's in the main. How are we adjusting here for the Belcher strategy?
Yeah, so what's interesting to this is we talk about, you know, if this was Ad Nauseam, well, they need to cast 2 spells, right? They'd always have to go Angel's Grace into Ad Nauseam, and you want things like that restrict them to 1 spell a turn, as you can see in the sideboard. But in this case, all you need is a Belcher. Now, you could, you know, prevent some of the other interaction, but really you just want to pack as much interaction as you can. You want to hope to lean on a hand that can find Thoughtseize they can follow up the early disruption with creatures. That game he had all pressure, no disruption. You'd like a healthier mix of that here. Meanwhile, you're going to be able to trim on obviously some of the excess creatures or removal that you don't think fits here. Maybe you don't love the bombardments. You're going to figure out how to just get a couple pieces of interaction in there and then try to have it, right? Thoughtseize is obviously going to do a ton of work in this matchup, and if you're Daniel, you're really looking for a hand that has access to that.
Just the classic formula of pressure plus disruption, and a few options for that. That's probably what these two Ragavans are for, or whatever. Just turn up the pressure, keep the interaction, but like you said, those thought seizes and things of that nature are really going to be key for breaking this matchup open. I think being Mardu here is going to come up big in that aspect. Let's take a quick look at Fletcher's deck list and the Goblin Charbelcher configuration we have here.
It's beautiful. So many blue symbols. I love it.
Oh, and a mount. So yeah, we got 3 Unable to Scream, 2 Spellseer, 2 Consigned to Memory, 2 Mistletoe Mute, 2 Harbinger of the Seas, 2 Into the Flood Maw, 1 Tormouth Script, and 1 Basic Mountain. So, couple good ones, couple weird ones. And, of course, as I mentioned, there's the Tanashi stuff in the main deck. How are we adjusting for a Belcher strategy, trying to react here to what the Mardu Energy deck has to offer?
Well, I have to imagine you're going to cut some amount of counter magic here because some of it's tied up in your land, so you obviously have to keep an amount. But whatever you can trim along there, you're going to try to trim because you need to have redundancy here because you anticipate your hand maybe being taken apart a little bit. I'm actually really interested to see how these Tameshis play out. I'm not that's a bit of a new one for me to see, but I have played against that card quite a bit in other formats. So very interesting how these worked out for Fletcher. Yeah, Commander All Star, don't you know?
Is it? I guess I don't know. I mean, I played for a Commander, and I've not played that much against Smash. I have seen some of the modern centric decks around the card. They got to splash here a little bit inside this deck. It's actually a nice little upgrade, little value piece. But yeah, I mean, I'm not even seeing a lot I necessarily want to adjust. Like maybe you want to reach for some Unable to Screams just to reduce some of the pressure. But even there, I don't know that I love that. Like you don't really want to trim any of your core of your main, and maybe the counter magic could find.
Spellsnare might work out a little better, especially if you're on the draw. Being able to Spellsnare their 2-drop seems fairly decent. So we are down to the match. We'll see how it goes. Daniel Weiser does get to be on the play this time, trying to take a match back against Fletcher Johnson here.
Yeah, I'll say this. I think with the sideboard configurations, the way that it's set up, I think that Fletcher either likes the energy matchup. Like we don't really see a lot of dedicated cards for the matchup, in my opinion, unless I'm missing something egregious about the way that this is going to play out. Or just doesn't feel that there's a sideboard card that can swing the matchup enough. So you're just like, whatever. I hope I win the die roll. I can resolve Belcher before they resolve. Like the One Ring or whatever can stop it from having an effect. And maybe that's how the games are going to play out. So it's interesting. Both of these decks, I think there's a little bit more adjustments that Daniel can make, but even there, we didn't see anything egregious. He got all the thoughts he's already in the main deck, so loaded up there for that. But I mean, both these players, like you just mentioned, at 5-1, I think this is a clean win and in. Basically, if you win, you can very likely draw, looking very good to make the top 8 of the Modern Showdown here. And for both these players, I think that's very important. These 2 players we've seen, across the season and across the whole year on the Energy Series. So a lot at stake here for these players, and I mean, they seem calm, they seem collected, and professionals as they are. Ignoring the stakes, just playing their best Magic, and like I said, for the most part, this matchup, based on if you're just going to take away from game number 1 and the way these decks are configured, looks really play draw dependent to me. Like the timing on the Lotus Bloom versus that critical turn to punch the kill seems like it matters a lot. But Daniel didn't even have a 1-drop, and that I think played a big factor for how that game played out as well.
Well, it did, because we were talking about could he line up 8 or 9 damage or whatever on that last turn with the bombardment. Having a 1-drop there in Ocelot Pride or whatever, giving you extra bodies, as well as poking in a few more points of damage, could have made it possible. Or obviously, you don't know exactly how the math works out, but here's some pretty good math. Ragavan on turn 1 for Weiser.
Yeah, 0 of those in the main deck, so that is one of the 2 sideboard copies coming in here for Daniel. Has it on turn 1, the way he drew it up, just never didn't have it. Ragavan on turn 1, the best turn for it on the play nonetheless here. And Fletcher also with a signature start here of a tapped land. This one, Orderly Plaza is the name of the back one. It doesn't have any relation to Suppression Ray on the front half, so I get that one kind of mixed up because it doesn't even evoke the front half.
Well, good for you knowing what the land side of it is, right? Hey, I would play the heck out of that card in limited sometimes, but
Yeah, I
yeah,
love these cards. They're cool.
yeah.
Come on. Flare of Denial, not what you really want to see off of the Ragavan hit, but I think the treasure is the more important aspect in this particular match. I'm not really looking for any value, and frankly, value, not really what this is about. These are two decks that are very much trying to race each other. Card advantage,
Well,
not really what we're doing.
you say that there's some value, put Fletcher in the graveyard, surveil it in there.
It's some very heads up here. The Hell Spellbomb coming in. So this is one that you can kind of crack the draw card, so there's a really low floor on it. And it really does a lot to shut down any of the Tameshi nonsense if that's present. So a good job having access to that one, I believe. Going to, yeah, okay, we're going to super shot bolt you with this, the Seagate Reborn. And,
well, it's going to add up very quickly because you got the spell bomb doing work, holding down any graveyard shenanigans, but more importantly, like Ragavan's just going to do a lot of damage. So here we go. And we're playing to the board here. The Otter coming down for Fletcher. Of course, that allows you to take a look at the top of your deck, and you can find a spell off of it, and then of course you can actually offspring the card for a bunch of mana. But a really interesting little addition to decks exactly like Charbelcher.
Yeah, the upgraded power crept, if you will, augur of bolus effects are things I'm very much about. You know, not enough players have just looked at the bottom cards in their library these days. And in this case, when your lands are actually spells as well, these cards here, we're joking a lot, these cards are very hard to miss on because a lot of the times they can find lands thanks to the front house being a non-creature, non-land spell technically. So you can actually find lands of these, and that's really what sets these up. That's why you want the full 8. You want the 4 Thunder Trap trainers and for Philology archaeologists to really help smooth out everything. And of course, as you're seeing here, provide an annoying blocker for Ragavan.
Yeah, and it turns on your flares, right? It's actually just low-key doing a bunch of work right now for Fletcher as he attempts to set up a much slower kill this time around, at least. Well, that's what we think as we see the Lotus Blue not getting suspended now until the second turn on the draw.
Yeah, the Nihil Spellbomb is a fine piece, but usually not the thing you want to play on turn 2. You want to keep the pressure going on turn 2. You're not really at risk of dying to Tameshi right away. So Nihil Spellbomb is the follow-up after Ragavan, even with the mana burst. Yeah. Not a great sign. Really feels like the Ragavan on turn 1 is what this hand was kept around. Seeing some action, getting a look at the hand here. We have the second Ragavan, Amp Raptor, that we're deploying. It looks like a bunch of Flages in hand, so
well,
a little bit of an awkward draw.
Yeah, the only black mana is actually coming from that treasure at the moment. And with the Otter down to block Ragavan, Daniel has access to exactly 1 black mana right now. Now, obviously, the Amp Raptor could get something, but if we talk about Thoughtseize and stuff being important in the matchup, Daniel has no Thoughtseize in hand, has access to just the 1 black mana. This Amp Raptor is really going to need to do some work here because I don't think he was really leaning on Ragavan with this.
Yeah, it definitely feels like we needed maybe a little bit more mana, at least counting on a second hit. As here comes Amp Raptor. This one would love to hit a Thoughtseize. Guide of Soul instead. Not a 0, and but not impressive.
Not amazing.
Just cast it. that's good. Guide of Souls is going to enter. Now that one, it's not like Cascade. The Amp Raptor's already in place. We're not going to get a second life and energy, but we do actually have the Galvanic. This is key here. Having a removal spell to get this out the way and keep the Ragavan hitting, I think, is very important.
Yes, that is huge. In fact, that might be the turning point of this game. We see Fletcher pick up his hand because what have we talked about? Free counter magic available to the Belcher deck, but none of it here, at least not in a way that particularly helps. The discharge takes it down, and Ragavan gets in, and that unlocks a lot for Daniel here. If he wants, he can practice Spellbomb on 1 step now, just to draw.
So asking if we can play this as a land, I believe, is the current question, based on the gesturing.
I don't know the answer, but I don't think.
Let's get Ragavan up on the screen. We got time as a judge call. Let's take a little look. See, can you play these? I think you would have to say play instead of cast.
That's correct.
Play, I think you can. You may cast that card. That sounds like you cannot play that as a land.
That is correct.
All right. I think we're going to get that dealt through here, but an interesting one, yeah, especially with all these like play from exile effects that they've been printing lately. We see this come up with like Reckless, with the Ren's Resolve, and whatever the other one, Reckless Impulse. Yeah, those kinds of effects. You actually can, so you have to kind of always check with the judge and that kind of thing. And Daniel Weiser very wisely did so. But yeah, that one says cast, so not going to be able to do anything with that sink into stupor. But have a simple attack force. Not all zeros here for Daniel.
Yeah, I mean, look at it. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 damage. You've got Fletcher at 13. 5 on board, obviously you have 2 energy. You're going to have Guide of Soul Triggers if you want it, and there's another Otter here for Fletcher. So setting up, I would assume there's another land coming off of this, and that looks like a Charbelcher in there. So if he didn't have, he has it now. But actually going to go for the Whir, which would suggest that Fletcher already has a Charbelcher, and he's just trying to set up mana. This would allow him next turn to Whir for 0, have a Lotus Bloom in play a turn earlier than that one he's got suspended. If he had a untapped land at that point, would it be able to go for it on the 4th turn? So that's what Fletcher's, I think, trying to look towards here. I don't know if that's going to work, though. Like, Daniel has a lot of pressure. And remember, Fletcher, we start talking about the lands, and he's already paid 3 life once. And here we go, playing another one that could cost you up to 3 life. And that really matters. It costs a lot of, that can equate to a full extra turn.
Yeah, and we see that coming in tapped for exactly that reason. And again, this Lotus Bloom didn't even come into suspend until turn 2 off of that of the first Thunder Trap trainer. So really kind of a turn too slow here. And I mean, that was the story of game number 1 for Daniel, right? So this has been very play draw dependent, back and forth. Here, I mean, like Fletcher not out of it. You mentioned counter spells and things like that. But I think if Daniel finds a land, I think that's kind of what we need here to really center things. We have the treasure we could use, but like getting Fletcher into play gets you energy number 3. That gets you a flying Ragavan, and that's like a big deal as far as keeping the pressure going, keeping your mana flowing, keeping things going in the face of this second Thunder Trap trainer without even needing a removal spell. I think we have all 4 flages between hand and graveyard. So really only 1 or 2 decisions here for Daniel as far as what to cast. And yeah, it looks like we are going to cast one using that treasure. And as you mentioned, that's key because now no black mana. But that will give energy number 3 and get some pressure going. Can gun down the trainer if you want. Maybe less important if you're swinging with all your creatures, and the Ragavan can get flying.
Yeah, so this is big here, right? Because if this Blade resolves, right, if you're Daniel, you spent the treasure on it. If this resolves, it clears away. But if it doesn't, if it runs into a Disrupting Shoal exactly like that, that is going to counter the Flash. So now all of a sudden the blocker's up. You don't have your treasure. You can't get in there with Ragavan unless you have, is he able to jump it with the Guide of Souls, or is he short energy?
Well, now he's short because the creature doesn't resolve. We don't get that 3rd energy that you need to really to get that triggered ability, get that flying, make it a monkey angel, and keep crashing. So now things get awkward. That was a very key, and this is actually an important part of the Belcher deck too. I want to highlight. You know, with that Hill Spellball in play, it's like, oh dang, my Tamashi doesn't work. Well, check it out. Now you get to just pitch it to your Disruptor. You can get off it, and that's like, oh, that is a real like point of power towards this deck, and why this deck, you know, is seeing so much play right now, even in the face of, you know, energy being theoretically the best deck. This deck has a lot of play to it as well, and that Hill Spellbomb really, I mean, you could say it's done something, right? The Tameshi has really gotten a lot accomplished, but Fletcher being able to find a use for the Tameshi, really take care of that Flage, I mean, that could be key, and that could be key for giving him that extra turn he needs to get that Lotus Bloom off suspend.
And that's why you see Daniel opts to just throw it all in there, because what else is he going to do? You have to poke in the damage. That's what your hand is, and hope that Fletcher's not able to close it out, and then I guess your Flages can get there. But wow, what a clutch counterspell that Disrupting Shoal.
Yeah,
it's so funny because Disrupting Shoal is like the worst Force of Will variant ever, and it's been in Modern forever. And it's actually, now that they've printed a bunch of other Force of Will variants, that Disrupting Shoal is at its best. It's very, very interesting how it's worked out, but it's been very good. And now Fletcher's going to go for another blocker, just going to preserve the life total here. Is able to put a land into play tapped. He's going to untap with a Lotus Bloom, and if there isn't disruption for Daniel, who'd have to go like Thoughtseize into Blackland with the Spellbomb, which you can't even. It's rough. There's a really limited options here. Fletcher's going to untap into Belcher, so this is the last turn for Daniel from his, certainly what he would assume.
Yeah, we can get some damage going with this Dash Ragavan. That gets you again to 3, but again, I mean, that really being able to find that extra turn. You mentioned Disrupting Shoal being kind of the worst Force of Will variant. Being able, not notably, Force of Negation is a card you can play in Modern. Choosing to play 0 of them, and you can see why here. Can't tag a Flage with that. And it was really important that it wasn't Flare either, right? Because then you have to sacrifice your creature. You don't have that blocker, and now Daniel can keep cooking, keep things running. The fact that it was specifically Disrupting Shoal, not any of the other free counterspell options in Modern, is so huge there, and really shines. Really, for the first time, Disrupting Show have been in Modern for as long as I've been playing it. Haven't really seen too many good uses for it. Looks incredible here in this deck, as creatures are very much what the format's about. Here comes a Ragavan. Looks like not dash, so this one cast for 1.
Well, and the other spell to throw in is to sink into stupor, right? And you just start talking about the suite of counter magic available to blue decks. And it's really impressive that even a combo deck like Belcher has access to all of that. A deck like Living In now has access to all of that as well. It's fascinating. But here we go. Big attack from Daniel, jumps the Raptor.
Uh, okay, yeah, here we go. And yeah, we can still block with our Flagy Archaeologist here. So we're going to do that. Get that one in front of the Guide of Souls. Of course, Antiraptor now a Dinosaur Angel as it crunches across. Ocelot Pride, the follow-up, have gained life this turn. But again, I mean, it looks to be just a little too slow with Fletcher at 6. And, Lotus Bloom coming off suspend. We know about a Whir, and I think there's a Charbel turn in. If so, this might be a clean 2-0 from Fletcher. Just the cards, yeah, just showing
Belcher.
Dave Weiser says, "Kill me. Show me you don't have a land." And so I think you're gonna see this get all backed up here. But I mean, what a showing for the Belcher deck. We were just talking about how this energy deck's running over everything. It's kind of the de facto best deck. And here we are, first match that you and I are in the booth to watch and to cover here is this new experimental, as you called it, Belcher strategy, really being able to clean up. Obviously, Beyond the Play is a big part of it, but Game 2 wasn't on the play. And, Daniel drew his sideboard cards, didn't draw any Thoughtseize, which definitely, you can talk about that as well. But clearly, like you mentioned, the energy deck, not this unbeatable monster that I think a lot of people are saying it is here's peak Modern gameplay as we're flipping the entire library of cards at that time.
Living In,
yeah, I missed the Cascade days. Here we go.
Yeah, Rhino. So many decks just involve you flipping so many answers involve you flipping your deck ad nauseum.
Yeah.
What about
it's so fun?
That's what Belcher's all about right there, and that is what Modern is all about these days, at least. And I am enjoying it. Look, that was fun. Okay, that was pretty great.
Classic Modern, I'd argue. Even if it's new faces, what you just witnessed is what Modern has been about since the beginning of time. So, yeah, if you're enjoying this content like we are, make sure you follow, make sure you support the stream. We do appreciate that. And I do believe we have a backup match with a very different texture as well. So, again, if you want to see more Modern action, as much as Modern's about what you just saw, Modern's also about deck diversity. A lot of different strategies available. And we should be seeing, I believe, 2 entirely different decks here in the backup here. There's Mikey Hopkins on your left playing 4 color elementals. Hello, old friend. And then Alexander Javed there on your right playing a very old friend in the form of Affinity. Haven't seen Arcbound Ravagers get sleeved up in too long.
This is great. This is amazing to see around 7 players at 5-1. Kahira, the companion, and it's not from a control deck that just doesn't have any creatures in it or whatever. That's cool. Affinity, that's really cool.
Sign me up.
And both of these players very live for top 8.
Again, another winning end, like the winner of this match, and looking very, very good to be able to draw. Maybe even play if you want. I don't know if you want to get spicy with it into the top 8. So, along the line for both of these players as well. Very much the same as what we just saw. Less leaderboard considerations as far as I'm aware, but still quite a bit to play for as far as the prizing that we have available. Otherwise, monetary invites, all those kinds of things, and very good start here. Kind of a classic Affinity start. I really respect the Mirrodin basics to go with your Affinity deck. As Ornithopter, either Spellbound to start, just a flooded stream for Mikey Hopkins. Back to Alexander we go.
That's a good point, by the way. He's got the original Ornithopters as well. Well, not original, I suppose. The Mirrodin Ornithopters.
Yeah, someone with a respect for classics. As I age, I gain more of an appreciation for that. Cranial plating, a card I haven't seen too much of in quite a while. Getting it spell snared. So this is what year are we in right now?
Straight out of 2012. That was amazing.
I love it. I love it so much. Spell snare getting busy again. Cranial plating getting busy again. Now, Urza Saga, a huge upgrade to this Affinity deck. If you want to talk about kind of the new look of Affinity, this certainly, it's packing new cards. This isn't just someone that forgot what year it is. We do have Urza Sagas. You got the Kappa Cannoneers, a huge upgrade there. Your Thought Monitors, your Emeries, all the cards that you kind of expect in some strange numbers. Not a lot of 4-ups present across this list. A lot of 1s, 2s, 3s, all over the place with the numbers, a good mixture of cards, and can make a lot of sense because with Affinity, you're very much looking for a specific mix, cheap artifacts and payoffs for them. So we'll see what Alexander could do. Early aggressions kind of stymied with the cranial plating being countered.
Yeah, that would have, of course, anybody who's watched Affinity over the years knows that a cranial plating just gets out of control really quickly, right? So with this turn, that ornithopter would have been attacking for probably 4 or 5 at a minimum, and then the next turn, it's all of a sudden attacking for 10 or something. But that was a really clutch spell snare, and that changes a lot. Now, the Urza Saga is going to give Alexander access to almost whatever he wants, right? You mentioned it, a lot of different targets, and they're all tutorable with that Saga on the next turn. But here you are, the Affinity deck that's famous for attacking for 8, 9 on turn 2 or 3 is just hanging out with an O2. Certainly not where you want to be, because Mikey's going to now untap with a window to resolve pretty much whatever he wants to take the initiative in this game, not the literal initiative.
Yeah, no, that's not a mechanic that we're working with here at all. Oh wow, what a sign of strength! I think if you're the control deck bidding a supreme verdict in this matchup,
That's
I think
right.
that is a clear sign of the dominant position. And I mean, certainly we see that from Alexander, right? No fading weakness here. If your turn is cracking, if there's spellbound pass, that's not where Affinity wants to be, no matter what you're playing in. And here comes Urza Saga. No constructs, thanks to not having. We don't even have 3 mana. We couldn't, use the Urza Saga to just make constructs, get that going underneath counter magic because we just didn't even have another mana sources. Here goes another mana source. Probably gonna have to find mana as a result instead of more things to get aggressive. And that's just, I mean, that's playing from behind. There's no two ways about it. And not that Mikey's up to a lot right now, but as with these elementals decks, that can change very quickly. A lot of your interaction comes with bodies attached.
Yeah, this is obviously a great spot for Mikey. Now, if you're Alexander, you're hoping that he bends that verdict because he's just digging for lands and is stuck on a bunch of
right,
expensive cards, and you hope he doesn't get there. But that cranial plating, I think, was pretty much plan A, B, and C for Alexander. As you mentioned, just having to go get Springleaf Drum with the Urza Saga, and now
Now we are artifact land cycling our Sojourner's Companion to find a Darksteel Citadel. So that is, obviously we're pretty far away from the number 7 to cast our Sojourner's Companion.
It's a play you can make, which is neat.
Yeah, I mean, this is a clear upgrade over Myr Enforcer, right?
That's for sure.
But we're talking about your land cycling in your Affinity deck. I mean, this is a horror show. Here comes Memnite, maybe a little late to the party.
Oh, but the follow-up Memnite will save the day.
Look, don't underestimate a Memnite, all right? That thing can carry cranial platings like a champ.
It can. All right, so Mikey is really, he's cast one spell and is in a great spot. So a little bit of a whiff draw here from Alexander, even with that cranial plating getting countered. But, okay, Mikey, you do need to turn the corner here a little bit, or Alexander's going to dig something out now that he's spent a little bit of time setting up. So if you're Mikey, what are you trying to do, right? Like, is there anything is there anything to do besides just wait it out and answer? Or are you trying to play to the board?
Well, you'd rather know Fletcher. I think you are fine making land drops, cracking them, getting your surveil value in, and really just building up your mana. Because the way Affinity is going to beat you traditionally is getting underneath you on mana, right? All their cards are cheap. Your cards are cost a million, so they're going to get underneath you. So, and here's the first sign of exactly something Mikey should want to interact with in some meaningful way. This is a card that can really start to snowball things out of control, get Alexander back in the game. So now Mikey, who's kind of been able to just chill for a long time, typically you used to see some 4-mana counter spells that can get you cards here as well. We'll see.
Cryptic Command, let's go one time.
No, I think it's subtlety. We got to do better options these days. Is there's the full value subtlety. So this gets the pressure going as well with the 3/3 flyer, going after Thought Monitor, which can finally be cast thanks to the Darksteel Citadels. But we have Metallic Radiant backup.
Well, that was actually huge right there.
Right.
Mikey was going to have it under control, right? You counter the Thought Monitor, you take 1 damage, you move on with your life. Instead, Alexander, with a huge rebuke, is able to resolve the Thought Monitor, draw the extra cards, and now it's pressure. That's a flyer. Now, Omnath, of course, is a huge play here for Mikey, and not a fetchline follow-up, though, just a Sacred Foundry follow-up.
Yeah, I think Omnath was actually the top deck. I think Mikey would have sequenced the lands a little bit different. I think he's had all of his lands the whole time, but he actually just drew that Omnath, so didn't end up holding a fetch. It doesn't really matter. You're going to want to use the mana right away for this Prismatic Ending to start to pick off some of the mana. But again, not a lot of pressure, but really starting to turn the corner. We're getting some pressure going as Alexander, and more importantly, getting cards. And now here's a huge saga. Can't counter the contracts coming off that, and those contracts are going to be big. So really, we're starting to see Alexander claw back in that game, really thanks to that metallic rebuke allowing that thought monitor to be punched through.
Yeah, that was massive. And we talked about Mikey, you know, you have a little bit of time here. You have a window. What can you do with it? Well, the play was to counter the spell and then take no damage and then untap the 5-man and feel good. But that completely turned this game upside down. And now, obviously, Omnath will help you get back in it. But you mentioned it. If your plan is to have a bunch of one-for-ones and sort of just value your way out of it, nothing messes that up like Urza Saga just churning out. What are they going to be, like 6/6s? They'd be massive.
Yeah, they'd be huge right now. And of course, only getting bigger as more artifacts are added to the board in the form of Lava Spur Boots. That gives these constructs haste if you have a little bit of mana to spare. So actually picking off that Springleaf Drum with the Prismatic Ending is actually mattered a little bit more than it looked at first glance here. But Kappa Canna near the follow-up, that gets a head tilt there for Mikey. This is a huge one. I think I saw a second copy of Subtlety in hand. You have to wonder, there was a decision, obviously. I don't know how close it is, but there was a decision whether to pitch cast the Subtlety on that turn or to hard cast. If you pitch cast, the Subtlety works, and the Metallic Review can't get it. Now things are really starting to spill out of control as Kappa Cannoneer enters, gets the counter from it entering. Powerful addition. This one's actually a reprint. I think it was originally printed in the Commander deck and Waves in Legacy. Now the little Blastoise impression here showing up in Modern. Ward 4, hard to get through, and of course it can kind of do a Trinium impression, becoming unblockable and massive when any artifact enters. And we have a nice way to do that turnover turn with this Urza Saga already dialed up. What's going on for Alexander's on the board? Mikey, now maybe wishing he had that Supreme Verdict, huh?
No kidding. No, that's a great call out, right, about the pitch cast on the Subtlety, because that is obviously a massive decision that maybe Mike didn't even think about, but that looks to be the turning point of the game. Because the Captain Cannoneer, you mentioned it doing Blastoise impression. Well, every artifact is Rain Dance. You go to town with that thing, and it can't be blocked. So, like, this game is just over if Mikey doesn't have an answer. And that's why you see him. He's actually going to play the land and shock it in here. So we'll see what he has. I don't spot another verdict in hand, which is exactly what he needs.
Yeah, I think this is the classic 6-mana Leyline Binding because we have to pay 4 for Ward. Oh no, we are going after the Lava Scrubbers. Okay. So that right, because it's Ward 5. I think you get a separate instance of Ward, so that takes up your
that is correct.
Ward does work.
Actually, so we have low-key disastrous.
I think it's pretty high-key disastrous. Mikey's certainly feeling it as we pass back, kind of head in hands. And this is really a game that you can highlight and go, like, Mikey's going to go, where did it all go wrong? It was anemic of a draw. And I think Alexander's really showcasing what some of these new cards bring to the table for Affinity. If you're talking about old Affinity, this would be a bloodbath. But the fact of the matter is these Thought Monitors, these Kappa Cannoneers, they're so swingy on their own that you can really kind of afford to limp around across the first few turns. And, here you go. Here's your aces in the hole. You don't really see X Champion anymore because you have this big thing that can, even better. It's just way stronger. And, even with an Omnath in play, even with all this stuff going on in the anemic start Alexander had, looks to be in a commanding position in this game. Really, all roads seem to lead to Rome, but does actually need to punch the ticket here. It needs to close the game out.
I kind of forgot about X Champion picking up a cranial plating,
Yeah, come on. If there's one thing I'm going to do, it's talk about the good old days. As here is a very important subtlety, trying to stop the second Thought Monitor. Hopefully not too little too late, but definitely needs to happen if you don't want things to get worse.
Okay, well, taking stock here, right? The boots is gone, so the constructs won't have haste. It looks like that did work, so the game is not quite just over. Remember, I'm not able to get you some extra life and at least do something about the Kappa Cannoneer beatdown. So Mikey's going to get a chance to untap here at 6 life. Let's see what he digs up. I spotted
Gotta be a good one,
I think.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. Racing an Omnath normally a pretty bad, thing to try to do. It gains life, boards life every turn. It's like racing a Shieldred. Okay, picking up
Kahira in a hand.
Not a good sign. Here's 4 more life coming. Back to 10 goes Mikey Hopkins. Are we going to deploy Kahira? I mean, there's a Thought Monitor on top, right? We know about that. So, yeah, now we just have Kahira. Gives vigilance so we can keep attacking and get some blocking going? I mean, we're set up well to raise, but I
Is
think
vigilance. Why not, man? Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
sure.
what it came up.
That's what the companions needed was more text on them. As here does come a construct. That one's going to eat the Omnath, so that's
Should wrap
tough.
it up here. Yeah. Those Urza Saga
Tough.
came through, huh? I think you're
The
right.
second Urza Saga came through. I think
Yeah.
we really did need two.
Well, you named it, right? Like, this is a game you go back and watch. And I don't know what would have happened if Mikey plays that turn 4 differently, but no matter what side of this game you're on, I think there's something to take away from those sequences of turns, right? There's really a lot going on, and we see how it's played out here. It ends in this, where the Captain Cannoneer just obviously gets out of control, and you're like, wow, wish you kept the verdict. But that Supreme Verdict was not the only decision point in this game, and there's
Right.
no
A
guarantee
lot
that
of
having the
things.
verdict beats the thought monitors.
And I think that's the positive and negatives of these surveil lands, right? They add extra decisions to the game, but as a result, games like this one are ones you go back and you sort of microanalyze every decision. You really have two camps of games. You have games where it's like, dang, that really felt like it could have been winnable somewhere. I really want to replay that and figure it out. And I think Mikey agrees with that head shake. I think he's in the exact same camp where he's like, dang, how did this slip away? Like, there has to be something that, I really want to go back and analyze. And there's games where you just get the doors blown off here or whatever. Like, you get Char Belcher on 4 and you're a turn away from killing him. Like, okay, it's probably not like, maybe I missed a point somewhere, but he was at 9. There's not a lot I could do. In this case, I think this is one of those games you're going to go back and start to microanalyze every decision. But here, I mean, at the end of the game, it doesn't look close. And if you showed me turn 2 of that game, and then asked me who was going to win, I'm not close. I would have said Mikey. And now looking at the end of the game, it doesn't look close the other direction. So really swingy. I mean, interesting matchup. Probably not a deck that Mikey was prepared to play necessarily. So there might be some of that going on as well. But either way, a tough first out there.
And he's got to now take a deep breath, go through your sideboarding, recover from that, because you mentioned he saw the head shake. It can be really frustrating. Look, you're deep into this tournament now. You've got top 8 on the line. You're in round 7 of the 10K here. It's a lot to work through, and that's why you've got to use that sideboarding time to try to get your mind right. And that's we're going to go straight, I think, into game 2.
Yeah, we're going to go straight into game 2. I can talk a little bit about some of the sideboarding cards that I think we might see. Notable ones here from Mikey that I want to highlight. Wrath of the Skies, great one if you're playing against artifact strategies. That one does destroy artifacts. Artifact creature enchantments. We got Pyroclasms. We got 3 of those in the sideboard if you want to reach for those. A little bit weaker because things like Cannoneer and Constructs are the cards that are actually problematic. Doesn't get those, but consigning some of the really out the gate fast kills, and that's kind of obviously the strength Affinity has, that pincered approach. And you have 4 consignment memory, so those hit the colorless spells, which notably, I mean, things like Cannoneer and Thought Monitor, again, 2 of the bigger problems, not colorless. So even though you're playing as an artifact deck, the consignment memories, you might want some, don't think you want all. And Affinity, taking a look at that, I don't know how much we're actually going to have here. Quick look at the sideboard. Wow, yeah, not a whole lot. You could reach, not even Force Negation does a lot. You saw Supreme Verdict as the Wrath. So unless you specifically have Wrath of the Skies on your radar, you probably don't want those. I think you're going to be a lot trimmer as far as your sideboarding from Affinity.
Supreme Verdict actually, would feel pretty good here, right? Obviously, Metallic Preview played a massive spot in game 1. Look at that. 3 zero-mana artifacts.
This looks like Affinity. Here's 3 0-mana cards. Vicious Baubles are these ones. We got Springleaf Drum as well. Doesn't look like we have a 0-mana creature to use it for mana.
We got the classic welding jar here, which is pretty good.
It can be. A little bit weaker, I'd say, in this matchup. A lot of the effects are exiling, and that makes your regeneration plan weaker.
Yeah, very, very keyly, and this hasn't mattered in it feels like a long time. But Supreme Verdict, destroy all creatures. It does not say they cannot be regenerated.
Yeah, not Rathagon. A notable change from Alpha is that. So, there we go. The same play worked out. What looked to be really good for Mikey last time, but ultimately ended up winning Alexander the game. Is there Spellsnare, but no third land for Mikey as we go back to Alexander. Urza Saga ticking up.
Yeah, Mikey mulliganed as well, so this is not his first hand was all lands. His second hand appears to only have a couple of them. If Alexander does have a third land here and is able to just start doing constructs or something like that, it's going to be a good spot. Instead, it's going to be Okay, looks like we got
Well,
another
if it's
cranial
cranial
plating
plates, that's
power.
something Mikey can beat. There's no
Yeah.
pressure, there's no creatures, and most importantly, there's no
Mm.
constructs being made off this Urza saga. I think that's a big deal for Mikey as far as staying in this game. You know, he can
Yeah.
answer and counter these cranial platings and tread water, and is doing so. Even though looks a little bit frustrated with the draw, I'd say he's actually in an okay spot.
You're right. The constructs. If Alexander would just been able to make a construct or two there, likely would have just been over. These cards would just rotted in Mikey's hand. Instead, he's not. He's got a shot, right? You
Yeah,
miss your land
absolutely.
drops, you've got a shot. You can get that third land off the top here. You find a way to get back in it, especially if we don't know the contents of his hand. But if he does have a board wipe of some kind, Alexander's going through the same problems he did in game one, right? You only had 2 lands. Here's a saga is now going away. You have a spring leaf drum, but no creatures to activate with it. So both players are just kind of hanging out at the moment. It's just the boots coming off of the saga trigger there for Alexander.
An interesting choice. You saw Alexander take a moment there to think through the options of the saga. I believe you can reach for things like ornithopters and knights as well. Yeah, okay, we're actually still thinking about it. Yeah, we are. I wanted to call out if you want to really get some pressure going, you're incentivized to get a creature that also plays well with the drum you already have in play, and you can protect it a little bit with your welding jar. It seems like you kind of want to reach for a creature, so it's a very distinct signal if you're reaching for lava spur boots in that this current context, even with the cranial platings that have been countered, and that's obviously now very important. Otherwise, this ornithopter could be attacking for quite a bit. Mikey instead, just facing down a 0/2 creature. I think worth noting what the grab is there and why, as Alexander going to fall with the Dark Soul Citadel. And there it is! Heartbound Ravager. I believe only a 1 on the deck list, but used to be, really the face of the original Affinity deck made an appearance here. Look at that.
It was a nightmare. If people don't understand what this means in context, it means that you can feed your entire board to the Ravager whenever you want to make it huge, and then feed the Ravager to itself to put those counters on anything you want, like, for instance, an unblocked Ornithopter. So Ravager just enables incredible tricks, especially when it came, back in the day, right, with Steel Overseer, stuff like that. Here you mentioned it's not exactly the face of the deck, but now all of a sudden that Springleaf Drum, that Welding Jar, even that Darksteel Citadel, all of that represents evasive damage.
Right. And obviously, it increases your resilience against removal, too, right? That's always been a big aspect of this card. Facing down the lightning bolts or control style strategies in Modern is anything you try to kill, sack it to the Ravager, and I get to get something for my time. I get something for my troubles. So your removal spells, if it's not going after the Ravager specifically, start to look somewhat embarrassing. So it kind of does like a Mother of Runes effect, where it's the first thing you have to kill on the board, because if you try to kill anything else, you're just not really gaining as much ground as you would otherwise. And here comes Emery, which is another must kill. I think Mikey needs to start hitting land drops, making spells that matter here. It looks like we bricked again.
Yeah, if he didn't get it there, I think he's in trouble. I was going to note he does have Consigned to Memory in hand, which you can actually use to hit the trigger on the Ravager if you needed to, but that was the burn. I think if you miss the land there, you're just not going to have a chance to get back in it. And unfortunately for Mikey, he did miss the land, and Alexander stuck on 2 as well, but he can do a lot more with 2 mana, not to be
One of these decks is better than the other on 2 mana.
Yeah, very much. Now, of course, with Emery, we can start rebuying things out of the graveyard. So I think things have fully slipped away here for Mikey. But what a showing for Affinity, huh?
A fascinating showing, I'd argue. Like, there's been multiple points through this match that I've been like, yeah, this looks like a pretty bad start for Alexander. And then 2 or 3 turns later, we're just looking at a board saying it looks like this. It's like, how did this happen? How did you snowball this out of control? And really, I think it shows not just the kind of understanding about what the matchups are about as far as from Alexander's side, but also, like you just mentioned, the resilience of the deck. It's not just an all-out aggro deck anymore. This is a deck that can hang. This is a deck that can play a long game and be comfortable, really hitting its stride. As there's well late to the party is Windswept Heath. Mikey very quickly fetching that one.
Yeah, we'll see if he has anything. I guess if you were to find a board wipe of some kind, a good old-fashioned Anger of the Gods or something here.
Anger of the Gods
doesn't have 2 red.
We got Pyroclasms in the deck.
Here we go.
There's
wow. All right. Oh, and he's got Consigned to Memory up for Ravager.
We have Metallic Rebuke for the Pyroclasm.
Well, that is huge, because Mikey had Consigned to Memory for
Ravager
to attempt to get it. But Metallic Rebuke for the second time, winning Alexander the game and probably the match.
Yeah, a huge pickup for this affinity deck. I mean, you can highlight all these other cards that we've talked about: Kappa Cannoneer, Thought Monitor, Urzaslug, all these like additions from what you would think of as traditional affinity if you've been playing Modern for a long time. But I mean, take a look at Metallic Rebuke, this improvised mechanic. Really, I mean, this counterspell being cheap and it works against anything is a huge deal in Modern right now because the Modern is not really about non-creature spells as much. It's about creatures, but in this matchup specifically, you do want to be able to still tag non-creature spells. This thing being able to get anything, really doing that Mana Leak impression, an awesome pickup, and I'd argue is what is allowing Alexander to punch through and continue to beat Mikey on mana and very likely win this game and match.
Yeah, I guess I shouldn't speak too soon as far as the game being over here. Mikey does have Consigned to Memory up, and actually just the bobble coming into play here off of the Emery, not going for a plating. Alexander opting to keep mana open. I guess if Mikey were to find Supreme Verdict, that is the clean answer here. If you, I don't know if he has one in hand, and then finds a land for it. That's probably the only way back in. That Pyroclasm would have been a good start. Would have helped quite a bit. Although I don't think he would have actually been able to get the Ravager even with the Consigned to Memory.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I think Wrath of Skies is an out until we get one of the big creatures, and we did just find one of the big creatures in the form of Kappa Cannoneer. That one's going to get deployed, and now it needs to be one of the two copies of Supreme Verdict, I think, but you need land number 4 for that, and we did find land number 4, but it is a tap land.
Oh.
So, bang off Trioma is the one.
Swing and a miss, Mikey. Sorry, man. You will have an opportunity still in round 8 to play if this one doesn't work out, but that is a brutal draw.
Insult to injury, I'd argue, especially with 2 copies of the One Ring in hand, I believe. That would give you some time, let you draw some cards. One of them might be a solitude, it might be a little bit mistaken there, but there's at least one, I believe. And, really start to deploy, use your card disadvantage cards, your elementals, to start to power back into this game. But with a tap land, not really allowing that plan to get started, you're in a lot of trouble, as you see Mikey doing, I'd say, the iconic counting of the artifacts to determine how lethal we're facing down next turn. You do, as you mentioned, do still have Consigned to Memory to maybe try to sign some of the bleeding. We have, looks like Leyline Binding to try to do so as well. Gonna go after the Arcbound Ravager and Consigned to Memory the trigger. Oh,
wow. Boy. Alexander is just the card advantage and the interaction coming out of
the counter spells have been timely for Alexander. Wow.
Well, and also good. The cards in the deck, right? The Emery providing the long-term advantage here. The Thought Monitors and setting up a turn where he could play Thought Monitor with counterspell backup, right? These are not the usual lines you see from Affinity, but they've allowed Alexander to get into the late game here and out card advantage a card advantage deck.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, being able to hang. I mean, I'm impressed. This is not what I expected coming into this match. I obviously haven't watched too much Affinity happen for a long time. And yeah, here's a lethal attack with the cranial plating on the Kappa Cannoneer that is unblockable. That's too much. Mikey Hopkins fell 2 games to 0 in the Affinity deck over the 4 color elementals. Like I said, not a result I would expect. Traditionally, these control decks are very strong in the face of Affinity, and obviously, especially if they have sweepers and I mean, what a demonstration from Alexander. The counter spells were timely. The threats, these new additions from the Modern Horizon sets looked incredible. And, really just piecing it all together and not really being shaken by the slow starts. Alexander did a great job. Now, hopefully, we'll see a little bit more Affinity in our top 8 later on in this tournament. But that will, of course, do it for round number 7 here. So we do have one more round of Swiss after this, where we will find the rest of our top 8 members. And after that, we're going to start working towards crowning a champion and finding out who the next player qualified for the 2024 Energy Championship will be. For now, don't turn that dial anywhere. We'll be back shortly.